So today's video is going to be a little bit different. I've had some people contact me about what this thing will do. They're a little bit worried about its splitting pressures and its hydraulic capacity. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to put it to the test. I'm going to make this video is for people who are wondering what this thing will split, what are its limitations, and we're going to figure that out today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run some max size log diameters through it. I've got some big, red oak logs. I've got some maple in here. That's maple. I got a piece of hickory up there, and we're just going to see what it can do, because I don't think there's a lot of information out on these processors yet. And when I bought mine, I was hesitant too about what it can do, but I'm very happy with it now. So I'm just going to put this thing through the test today. I want to see, and I want to show you guys what this thing can and cannot do. You just got to remember that everything has its limitations. So just keep that in mind today. This isn't a $70,000 processor. It's not even a quarter of that cost. So just keep that in mind with the video. And I'm going to load some of these big old pieces on there, and I'm going to throw the 8-way wedge on, see if that'll split anything, throw the 6-way wedge on, and then we're going to finish it off with the 4-way wedge. So let's get started. So what I've got up first today is, don't mind this piece, I had it on from the other day. This is just a 6-inch piece of birch. Beech. But what we have today first is maple. This is just regular hard maple. We got a 10-inch round, about a 12.5-inch round, and then last but not least, we got a crooked 9-inch round. So I'm going to start off with the 8-way wedge and then slowly move back from there. So if it doesn't have a problem splitting with the 8-way wedge, I'll put the whole log through. And then if it's got a problem, if it gets stuck, I'll swap to the 6-way wedge, and then I'll swap to the 4-way wedge. And after this stuff, I got some oak, I got a piece of ash, a piece of birch, and then it looks like another piece of oak or something like that. But if you guys can you hit that like button, because this part's going to take me a little while swapping all the knives and stuff, because I know this is a nasty knotty piece of maple, and I know for a fact that the 8-way wedge won't split it. But we're going to try it out for YouTube, and I'll show you guys what this thing can do and what its limitations are, so that if you're in the market, you'll know what direction you have to go in. Alrighty, so on that first set of logs, the big one, the big knotty one I thought I was gonna have trouble with, actually went through amazing, but it turned out to be red oak, so it wasn't maple. But now I filled this up with oak. So the first one, we got a 10-inch piece, 12-inch piece, another 10, like maybe a 10, and then a 13. Actually, this one's bigger on that side. This one's about a 14 on that side. I haven't been able to find in my pile there something like, they're a little bit bigger than 14. They're like 15, 16. And I can get those through here, but I don't feel like messing with it. So I got these. These are pretty much max size that you can put through here. So let's start with these. So next, for our victims, we have 4 pieces of ash. We have an 8, a 9, 10, and then another 8. And then we have a big piece of birch, which at its longest, or its widest, is 14¼ wide. So we're gonna run that thing through, see if this can handle it with the 8-way. And yeah, this thing is really impressing me right now. The other day when I had the 6-way on, I was like, oh, okay, you know, a little struggle here and there. And it's struggling a little bit, but it still has a really fast cycle time when you can account that it takes the log, cuts it, and then splits it. You know, you'd have an even longer cycle time if you were to use a chainsaw, cut it, put it on the log splitter, and then split it. So this thing's really impressing me right now. I'm like kind of surprised that it's handling it, to be honest with you. So let's run these things through. So that last piece of birch was quite stubborn. It didn't like it on the 8-way, kind of refused it on the 6-way, and what solved the problem was the 4-way. You know, this processor does have limitations, and just because it can take a 14-inch piece doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, I can take a 14-inch piece with an 8-way wedge. So I've got some bullets that I've kind of thought of here, and the question comes down to is if you want to resplit any of the pieces, because when you're using that 14, when you're using the 8-way with the 14-inch wood, you know, you end up with pieces like this that are just massive. I mean, that's probably 6 inches across in diameter, and you know, if you're delivering to restaurants and elderly people that burn firewood, I wouldn't want to handle this, and you know, you can't cook with this. So what I do with these big pieces is I use a 4-way pretty much on everything, and I move it so that the bottom half of the 4-way always has the perfect size, and then I'll pull the top half back and keep splitting the top half, and that way I get like the same size wood every time. But you know, you can't, in my area this just isn't acceptable for firewood. That's just too big. People would complain about it. Another thing I wanted to cover is it seems like it has a slow cycle time, like it's having trouble pushing that wood through. But you got to remember, this thing's only 7 tons of pressure on like 7 tons of splitting force, so it's not a lot when there's log splitters out there for, you know, 10 or 12 or even 14-ton log splitters, but their price is up in the 12 to 13,000 for those. And if all you're splitting is small log truck load delivery firewood that's less than 12 inches in diameter, you can spend an extra $5,000 more and get something that can cut and split them at the same time. So it's just something you want to keep in mind. So obviously we see that this thing has limitations, and the limitations that it has is obviously the diameter. It can't take anything larger than a 14-inch piece. And another thing is knots. This thing doesn't really do good with knots when you have either the 6 or the 8-way wedge on. As you saw with those straight oak pieces, it just devoured them because there's no knots in them. It just pushed them right through the 8-way, had no trouble with them. But when you got to that big birch, you know, that was nothing but knots, it just didn't want to deal with them. And if it had a little bit more tonnage, I'm sure it would push right through, you know, but you're talking more money at that point. So I guess when you're talking about these machines, where do you want to draw the line? Is it the specs of it, or is it the cost of it? Because you got to balance the two out. You can't have the best machine for under $20,000. It's just not going to happen. There's no way possible. Another is, you know, how small of wood do you necessarily want? Because if in your area they accept this as firewood, then yeah, I mean, put the 8-way wedge on, just split it, load it into a truck and sell it. But you know, in my area that's just not acceptable, so I can't really use the 8-way wedge. And another thing is, so my lengths are 16 inches long. If I was splitting 20 to 18-inch long pieces, it would have an even harder time with them because it's just that much more of grain that it's got to push through to get the grain to split apart on the wood. But if you're splitting smaller for like restaurants, let's say like 14 to 12 inch wood, the 8 and the 6-way just won't have a problem with anything, knots or, you know, nothing. So, you know, that's another thing, is how long of a piece are you splitting and the diameter of wood that you deal with. And I guess the final question is, does this replace a log splitter? And the answer is no, it doesn't replace a log splitter. There's nothing that my log splitter can't split, while this has stuff that it can't split. So, I mean, there's stuff like this piece here. I won't even try to send this through because I don't want to put a strain on the machine. See, there's a knot there. It's just like a big nasty piece, and you don't want to put the strain on it. So it doesn't, this machine won't replace a log splitter. I'm sure when you get up into the bigger models like the 395 or the 405 that just has the extra tonnage just to send the wood right through, yeah, it can probably replace a log splitter. But if you're dealing with firewood like me, you know, you tree company guys out there that are looking at this, when you pair it with that table and you're always dealing with those 4-foot, 5-foot pieces, you know, load those on the table and feed them right in. You know, it's not a problem. You don't have to bend over with a chainsaw anymore, and then pick them up and then put them on the log splitter. So in short term, this machine is awesome. I love it. I have no problems with it. Do I wish that it had more splitting force? Yeah. But at the end of the day, I had a certain amount of money, which was my limiting factor. Of course, if I had, you know, $80,000, yeah, I'd get the biggest one, but it wasn't possible with what I had. And you know, that's, at the end of the day, that's everybody's limiting factor, is how much you're willing to spend on something. So that's going to be it for the video. Please like the video. There'll be more stuff like this coming out. If you guys enjoy the videos, leave it a like. Let me know what you want to see next, and subscribe. Thanks.